you were asking if it was awkward. It was because Courtney made it awkward purposefully many times. Like we'd be going to lunch or something and we'd get in the elevator and he would just corner you and be like, hi. So that was really cool to work with him. Having him there, being someone that I had already, looked up to.
Welcome back to another episode of Modified Rides Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burrell. Today I have someone I've worked with off and on through over the years, someone who's been in the automotive magazine and media industry for a while. Want to welcome Jason Mulligan. What's going on, Jason?
How's it going? Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I know we were kind of talking back and forth about what to do, and now we're here.
So Jason has his own, I guess it's a media company is what you're running now?
Yeah, so we got Auto Revolution, started that after leaving Street Trucks magazine, and so mostly focusing on video content online, and then last few years we've been really diving in on the podcast realm. So we've got 3 podcasts that we do.
Nice. So let's start back at the beginning before we get into all the Auto Revolution stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Did you first get into modified vehicles and then step into the photography and editor role, or did you do that backwards?
A little bit. I mean, definitely the vehicles and being involved in, the show scene and truck clubs and all that, but kind of almost in a little bit parallel. I was doing graphic design, doing photography, doing the art side, and then just kind of was able to bring it together a little bit. So I started getting into trucks and stuff in high school. My dad was always into cars, custom cars, but more like muscle cars or classics. And then my cousin, who actually did a lot of work for Craig Elder, all those, crazy wild lifted trucks and stuff like that. He did, but in 96, 97, he had a body dropped, extended cab, Silverado. It was a 96. So it was like brand new. Brian Gendro, body dropped it, 17-inch billets.
Which were
I remember
big
him
back then.
doing yeah, exactly. This is before 20s and yeah, had, probably a 1 or 3 gallon tank, air tank with, Thomas or whatever compressor. I just remember it was in the back corner of his bed and it was like that big and a little compressor. But yeah, and he did, smooth in the roll pan, shape the tailgate, all that. And that was seeing like the custom car stuff that my dad had and what he was interested in. It's like, all right, that's cool. But then I I just gravitated towards the trucks and, especially that CK truck. So I go through all the trucking magazines. Some of them I think my dad had, and he would even get pissed at me for like circling parts in the ads, be like, all right, I want these built wheels. I want this grill or this, kind of building my truck. And, I was in junior high school. So then, yeah, I went to college for graphic design. So that's what I have my degree in and was doing photography as part of that. Even in high school, cause I knew I wanted to go into that part of the industry. But, was able to get, my 97, Chevy truck. I'm going backwards.
Red
that
one
right there. So I got that while I was in college, started just doing the lowering and did, the stuff. And like I said, my reference was kind of that 90s style, trucking magazine. So kind of went after that first. And then as I was online and on the forums and started to go to a couple truck shows, started learning more about the more current stuff and, air suspension and all that. So, started building that truck, I was in Local Finesse Club at the time for a couple of years before joining Relaxed Atmosphere. And just through the building that truck and talking to people, networking, started getting more and more into the industry, meeting people, meeting some of the magazine editors, and kind of started, doing our own thing.
Now you're in the LA area, right?
Yeah, Southern California.
So
Yeah.
you were near where with all their main offices when everybody worked in an office back then. So it's not like you were
Yeah.
in another state and would run into them. They were semi-local to you.
And that's, yeah. So whereas, yeah, maybe if I was out of state, it would be, you know, at a show, you know, if we went to a show or something, or they came out to a show, you'd run into, but yeah, I'd be at someone's shop and, you know, like Go Easy, you know, they did the air suspension on my truck, and like Kalen Head or Galen or Jeremy Cook and those guys, you know, would stop by, you know, and so we just run into them at different shops, you know, around town. So that was kind of, you could actually talk to them and meet them and stuff like that, you know. And I met Courtney Hallowell, you know, that way. I think just hanging out with, you know, a couple friends around town, because I lived in Fullerton, I think at the time. He lived in Anaheim, so we were, you know, 10 minutes away. And that's, you know, the street trucks office, trucking office, all that was all just right in Orange County within 10 to 15 minutes. So kind of all just kind of collected that together.
And that's the thing with me being in North Carolina. I'd only see any of those guys or, you know, you later on or whatever at shows. So if I would have had that local, I think that probably would have, you know, maybe it jump started my deal a little easier. But I guess you having that same connection, same thing Brian McCormick said he had, you know, he'd run into the guys and was local. Yeah. So it was easier back when everybody worked out of an office and not from their own house like they do now.
Well, and that's, yeah, you know, you would, even for people building a truck or something like that, you know, you had Truck Jam or Forbidden Fantasy, you know, maybe at a show out back east, you'd have one editor from each magazine, or you'd have just one guy coming out. You'd go to that show and there would be everybody from every magazine. You have 3 or 4 guys from each magazine because it's the local show basically. So yeah, it's just more exposure to that. But what actually kind of got me involved more in the, I guess my bridge into the publishing, you know, magazine world, me and a friend started a website in probably 2004, 2005 called showtruckscene.com. And we started that because, you know, we both did graphic design, both did photography, both had, you know, bag trucks, and we're looking at, we were looking at, you know, SoCal Customs. We were looking at, you know, all these online sites, you know, doing coverage and stuff like that. And I was like, well, we can do all that, you know, and I think actually too, a couple of us had gotten banned from a forum because I think we were like doing our own stuff and setting up our own things and just, I don't know. Can't remember exactly what it was, but we all left like gmfullsize.com or fullsizechevy.com. And then so we're like, all right, let's just start showtruckscene.com with, you know, the forum. And we did show coverage, did some features. And there were always like just features on people that were members of that, you know, forum. So kind of built up a little bit of a little community on that. And what's cool is like, you know, that little group, you know, a lot of those guys are still staying in the industry. One of the guys, Dylan Von Kleist, he was the marketing rep for Adams Polishes for a long time. Then Rupees, Nick DeCasas, who I think currently works at like Weld Racing Wheels. He worked at Intro Wheels before that. Brian Stern, who was the Intro Wheels sales manager. So a lot of it, you know, kind of created our own little community around that site. But magazines were still like the top level, you know. Yeah. It was still the kind of the height for that. So I still wanted to get in, you know, and start freelancing for some of these magazines.
So with you starting to meet some of these people and stuff, I guess did they approach you about working, or you had worked at, I guess it was what, Icon first or something?
So yeah, I worked in college. I worked at Audubon for the last like probably a little bit of time I was there. So I did graphic design at Audubon, and then got a job at Icon Media, doing graphic design for various, you know, mostly wheel companies, some tire companies, Ready Lift, stuff like that. And I was doing Show Truck Scene at the time, and, you know, was doing show coverage, doing articles. And it was actually tailgate. Gil Luna,
I remember Gil.
met him with I think it was him and Eddie Sabreco. We were hanging out at West Coast Customs at their open house when they were in Corona, and obviously I was doing a lot of stuff with all the guys from Go Easy. They had done my truck. We were always hanging out there, and so Gil wanted to do a shop feature, and so he was like, hey, can you set it up or get me in contact with him? So we did that, and that turned into me and him doing the photo shoot, and then I did the whole write up on it. So it kind of started there, basically, where tailgate I started doing show coverage, doing photo shoots, and what was good with that is I had my job at Icon, and it was cool enough. Dave and Scott were if I was going to go out of state for a show, like I went to Texas or Louisiana, Gator Drag, stuff like that. Yeah. If I had to take Friday off, it was kind of like, all right, just get all your stuff done, take Friday off. And if anything, it was in the industry still, so it was we even brought in a couple clients and stuff like that from me being out at some of these shows. So it all kind of worked out, as a side gig, but also kind of helped with the main deal.
I never knew you started with tailgate. That's, I mean,
about a year and a half, maybe.
Tailgate was big. I mean, Gil, I'd see Gil at shows on the East Coast quite a bit. So
yeah,
I never knew that's where you started. Now, when you were at Icon, did what?
Yeah, I was saying, did you do any shoots for tailgate or?
Yeah, I did a few for Gil, a few show coverage East Coast stuff for him. But back then I was shooting for anybody and everybody, but
yeah,
not the only way to make that money work. But now you were at Icon, wasn't Johnny O there and Mikey, or was that the same time you were there?
Not the same time with John O'Neill was later on when he ran the studio there, but we were in probably 2007 or so looking to expand into doing video. And that's when, so I suggested Mike Venegas, Low Life
Mike,
get hired on there. So he was, Mike was kind of doing the video stuff for that, and then just kind of kept going from there.
Now, how did you transition from shooting for tailgate into shooting for, or I guess running street trucks? Was there another step in between, or was it just a direct change?
Yeah, a few steps. So yeah, I was at tailgate for probably a year and a half. First started out just doing some, like you said, show coverage, features, and for me it was
just freelancing.
Yeah. I was never employed or anything by them, but if anything, it was okay. I can make a couple $100, pay my travel to go to a show, all that, and have fun. So I was doing that, and then like probably the last couple of issues, I was doing more. I was kind of more involved, where I'd maybe do some planning of what was going to be in the issue, setting up some more stuff, and kind of being more involved. Like it kind of seemed to me, and I think that's what it was, is like Gil was probably taking a step back or managing other magazines more, and so I was kind of like being like positioned to maybe be in charge of tailgate and kind of run that. But 2008, they announced it was going away, no more Tailgate magazine. So they cut that.
Shut a couple different books down then, didn't they? They kept
Probably.
Easy Rider, right?
Yeah, I think Easy Rider, because they were the company that had like Tattoo, which I think they kept that, and I don't know if they might still have that. It was like Tattoo magazine, Easy Rider. There's another biker one. So yeah, they had a handful of magazines, and I think they, the Tailgate was an interesting model because there was no ads in Tailgate.
There wasn't.
Yeah, there was no ads, and one of the reasons is because the earlier on in Tailgate, a lot of the content was same as like the biker magazine. So you had models, you had crazy party, truck run
Shenanigans.
photos.
Yeah.
All that stuff that a lot of the advertisers weren't really, okay with. So they had, I guess, done away with any ads and were just focusing on, the sales on, subscription and newsstand. And I think it was like a higher price point than, like a trucking or street trucks at the time. But I think Gil was trying to like clean it up, trying to kind of push it back into the mainstream and be able to get some of these advertisers. But just the timing of, the recession hitting it just didn't pan out. So that was probably April 2008. And I'd already had, I think, one or two features shot. I had, I think the truck that was going to be the next cover, there was like a candy apple red S10, had that either already shot or was, going to shoot it. So I had already met Travis Nowak, at Marcel's, my business partner now, at his shop when him and Tom, McWeeny were painting my red truck, doing all the flames on it.
Okay.
So that was, when we were doing that, they were also doing Marcel's Nissan. And so it was like Travis would stop by, Jeremy Cook would stop by, Kalen from Sport Truck would stop by, so it was kind of like just all, people coming to it. And then, Sport Truck actually did a tech article on the flames on my truck. So when Tailgate went away, I hit up Travis and said, hey, I've got, 2 or 3 feature trucks shot, did all this for Tailgate, if you want them, sure. And, basically try to start freelancing for street trucks. And then I think I had sent in like maybe one article or one feature. And then it was probably, I think 2 or 3 weeks later that I got laid off from Icon Media. So basically like,
due to the recession.
What was that?
Just due to the '08, everything slowing down, they just cut back, or?
Yeah. Well, and that's, you look at, obviously a lot of the custom, especially the wheel industry, I remember a quote from it was like the VP of SEMA. We had a meeting when I was at Street Trucks later, and it legitimately was how are we going to save this industry, like roundtable with a bunch of media people and companies. And, I remember him saying that the days of the soccer mom with the Escalade and big wheels on it are gone. It's now enthusiasts, like you got to cater towards the guys that are always going to be doing this no matter what. It's all the fringe, disposable income, wanting to look cool that kind of started to go away. So it, the wheel if you looked at the magazines in 2008, 2009, when a lot of those started trimming down or cutting or going away, a lot of that was because advertisers were pulling out. Well, it would be months before that the advertisers were cutting their marketing budgets down. So we were kind of the first hit in the dominoes, if you will, for that time period of the recession, because, we had a few companies that would like, and I remember specifically there, one of my clients that basically, I was told like I had, that main client, I had 2 or 3 other ones, but it was like that one paid your salary. Like that client covered your salary. Like that was it basically, and then everything else is just gravy. And they trimmed their budget by like 2/3. So they cut back big time on, they didn't go to SEMA, weren't going to be doing as much advertising, weren't going to be doing a bunch of new wheels and new catalogs. So it was basically, they didn't need us, to the same extent. And so the money was just starting to slowly, dry up. And I messaged, emailed Travis and basically said, hey, just got laid off. Is there is there an art position, for an art director or editorial? Because I could do graphic design. Obviously, I could shoot and write. So did that and wound up going to an interview and got hired on as, I believe, associate editor is what my title was at that time. So
Now, who all was there when you got hired on at Street Trucks?
it was Travis. And John O'Neill was just before that, I believe. And
It was
then,
just Travis when you were there. So you were
yeah,
number 2. Okay. I was trying to remember the lineage of
the
who went
timeline.
there.
Yeah. And then John Stewart was the editorial director at the time, but he didn't have as much like involvement day to day, like as let's say like Steve Stillwell maybe had on that magazine on Street Trucks. So, but yeah, started there, 2008, and then it, like I said, the domino stuff started a lot hitting the magazine side, and we went through some changes and being sold or bought, and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of look at it as a little bit, I think I was maybe lucky timing wise of being able to get the job at Street Trucks, because a few months later, guys, Mike Finnegan or people from Sport Truck or other magazines were getting laid off, from those magazines. Whereas like if I'd been trying to look for a magazine job at that time, there was 5-10 other editors with way more experience than I had to, fill that position. So kind of, I guess, maybe lucked out in being laid off as early in the process as I was. So, and it was an uphill, battle a little bit, because I think Street Trucks always had that, it's always had that quality level and that reputation and that name. And I, like I said, I'd been in the club, I'd been going to a lot of different shows, obviously in the industry, knowing a lot of people, but there was still a little bit of a, who the hell's this guy, now coming in
New
here.
kid, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think I was 25, 26, when I got the job at Street Trucks. So a little bit of that too. But, I think, my background in the creative side and being obviously a truck enthusiast for the longest time, I just put all that into it and just, enjoyed traveling, enjoyed all the shows and shooting. So
I think that's one thing that always set Street Trucks apart, even from day one, is it was always the enthusiasts that were running it from day one. So,
and that's what, and even I think later on in when I was editor and stuff of like Street Trucks versus other, magazines, is trying to cater to that enthusiast. Yeah, we got to keep advertisers happy. You got to keep the business going. But, if you focus on the guys that are doing it, that love it, they're going to gravitate towards, the magazine, and they're going to buy and support the magazine.
yeah.
If you, they're your customer base. So yeah, you got to appeal to those enthusiasts. Courtney had a saying, and it was, don't do the magazine for the guy that won Best of Show at Truck Jam. He's already got everything. He already knows. Do it for the kid that parked his S10 in the parking lot and walked into the show.
Yeah.
So that's the guy that he wants to see all the cool stuff, but he also maybe wants to know how to lower his truck or what wheels he can put on it. So he's like, that's your audience to strive for. So try to do that to kind of keep everything balanced. And also too, especially during that time, that early, 2008 to 10, with the recession, with the enthusiasts being kind of your only audience at that time, your only buyers, started doing more like DIY tech, more garage, driveway kind of stuff, at either Travis's or at Marcel's house, which at the time they actually lived like 4 houses away.
Nice.
Yeah. So like you might have seen some of the, like there was a photo, and it was in front of Travis's house where we had a bunch of trucks and a barbecue grill, and Courtney's like drinking a beer, and I can't remember if I'm in it or if I was taking the photo, something like that. So, but that was Travis's front driveway, and then Marcel's went down the street.
All you guys became cover models during that era as well. So,
well, and what was interesting, and we were talking a little bit ago about, or a few weeks ago, with Tom McWeeny, and we, obviously appreciated having this little tribute in the magazine.
Definitely cool to add that in.
I think he himself has been on the cover more than anybody. I think we tried to count, because like if you look, behind me, that's Marcel's truck. That was the first. Of course, we got the reaction damn thing. I hate that. But yeah, so Marcel's on there, Tom's on there in the front. There was also the what was it?
There's one he was wiping
the Nissan. Yeah, the Nissan, and then the last one with Foxy Cleopatra, C10, the 15-year anniversary issue. Tom's on the cover striping, him and Rhino, and then he's had obviously there's been his trucks on the cover of Street Trucks as well, but actual person, I think, because like Travis has been on there, I think once, twice maybe. Jeremy Cook, I think, was on there once. Marcel's been on there twice. I don't think I was ever on the cover actually myself, but
Tom was the most decorated Street Trucks cover model. That's something
exactly.
that's down history with.
Yep. So, and it was cool too, like doing some of those like setup shots. I always liked those, seeing those in the old magazines, and like the cool one with Travis's white truck in the yard with all the parts and different engines and stuff. Like we even were trying to like hide little things in there to, just as like inside jokes, we did that a few times, hide some stuff. Like there was in that one, I know there was like a ceramic squirrel that we like had up there. And then like there was some pics, like obviously trucking, and sport truck when they're around, and main truck, there was our competition. We kind of looked at like running our own race. We have a certain style and certain content that Street Trucks does, and we're just sticking to that, not trying to do what maybe another magazine's doing. But we had, some friendly competition, and we would poke fun. So like we did have on a couple covers, supposedly there was a large study paid for to see how, I think at Truckin' Magazine, of how like what elements of a cover made it sell the most, and the only like line that connected that they could like pinpoint anything that was common throughout was someone washing a vehicle. So you had a water hose and a soap bucket.
Yeah.
And so we would throw in a couple of the covers and like some of the artwork, we had a little, wash bucket and hose and stuff in there that we threw in. And then on the 10-year anniversary, we did, you saw the subscriber cover or the subscriber cover, the artwork that was done.
Which one?
So it's the one that with my truck on the cover, but we did a special cover for subscribers only. It was all hand-drawn artwork that Fuel did. So there was a bucket with an RC boat in there as a little jab to trucking, because when they were featuring boats and all of that.
Forgot about that.
So we just have fun with it. Just try to. Like I said, there's competition, it's business, but also we're doing trucks, it's a truck magazine. You don't take it that seriously. So, and it was cool too having, Courtney Howell, we hired him back 2009 or 10, and he was doing the Hot Rod magazine that we had at the time, but he would help out on Street Trucks and
Muscle Car Power, wasn't it?
Yeah. Muscle Car Power and World of Rods. So those were,
that's right.
Yeah, like the 2 car kind of magazines at the
I
time.
actually have a couple
Um,
covers for Muscle Car Power hanging in my office.
yeah, and that's what I mean. That's kind of that combination is what became the Maximum Drive magazine that I did. I was involved with later on. Just kind of that genre of vehicles. But yeah, it was really cool having Courtney working there next, in the cubicle next to me, you know,
Was that
playing
awkward
jokes. And,
with him being one of the founders that set everything up? Now he's back as an employee per se.
I mean, it wasn't awkward or anything. It was awesome because, I had looked up to Courtney, you know,
I think we all did.
knowing the magazine, and then met him, hung out with him before I was even in any involved in any magazine things, and then able to work with him. And, and if anyone knows Courtney, he was always, having fun and making jokes. And, he would, if you said you were asking if it was awkward, it was because Courtney made it awkward purposefully many times. Like we'd be going to lunch or something, and we'd get in the elevator, and he would just corner you and be like, "Hi." So that was really cool to work with him. Having him there, being someone that I had already looked up to. So
Well, he had shot my car for my Honda for mini trucking the one year they did cars one per
yeah,
issue, and he actually shot that back in '98. So that was kind of my first step into like, all right, I feel like I'm somebody now. I've had a magazine feature. Courtney was the one that shot it, and like that kind of
yeah.
got my wheels turning.
That was your benchmark or your goal, first goal achieved kind of a thing. Yeah.
The funny part is before the car was ever done, I had one of the local drug dealers carry a big stack of cash and be like, "Man, I want to buy this car. You finish it. I'll pay you all this cash for it." I'm like, "No, my goal is to get it in a magazine." Had no clue mini trucking was doing cars, had no clue
I was
it would
gonna
ever
say,
happen.
yeah. Well, it was probably if I don't even think High Beams was around at that time.
No, back
I don't
then,
think there was
Sport Compact
anything that
Car was
maybe
still doing
okay. Yeah.
that stuff. They weren't all tuner and stuff back in the late '90s. So I'm like, my goal was to get it in a magazine. Had no clue it would ever happen. So if I would have sold it to him at the stereo shop with that stack of cash he brought me, no clue where I would have been because I wouldn't have met these people and wouldn't have met you and stuff like that. So
Yeah. It's
so
kind of it's kind of one of those things. Is like, yeah, you turn down a big stack of cash, but you also were able to
open doors.
get open doors for a career and for a lot of things in the future. So it's kind of
Now,
it's those decisions you got to figure out.
now, when did you take over Street Trucks? Because you and Travis were there for a little while together, right?
Yeah, for about a little over 3 years, I think. So 2008 is when I started on there, and I want to say probably 2009 or 10. Travis became editorial director of like all the automotive titles, and then he was the editor of Muscle Car Power when Courtney was doing World of Rods.
Okay.
And then eventually Courtney did Muscle Car Power as well. But so obviously Travis was then in the meetings and dealing with management and the higher ups and stuff like that. So probably the last year or so, till 2011, he was still the editor of Street Trucks, but we would do like the run sheet basically for what's going to be in that issue of the magazine, and
Yeah.
I did the whole run sheet. So I was basically selecting everything that was going to go in the magazine, doing kind of basically not running the magazine, but like doing all the work to put it together because, Travis was doing another magazine and a lot of the management and all that stuff. So kind of was working on that. And then, Courtney passed away in 2011, and anytime stuff like that happens, someone close, especially if you're working with them too, is
He was still
a
working
lot
for
of
the magazine then,
Mhm.
wasn't he? Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. A lot of kind of start to reevaluate or look at things, look at your life, see what's going on. And I think, Travis it's one of those like doing 5 things and, your management or somebody's maybe not appreciating it or not, it's kind of like you're pushing a rock uphill and not getting the help you need necessarily. So I think he was kind of getting over it, and so he left to go work with his family, do commercial real estate, and all that. And so that was like end of 2011, and so I became the editor, and basically, I myself, and then just kind of really dove into using the freelancers, and Marcel would do a lot of tech stories, a lot of the builds and stuff like that, we were doing. So 2011 end of that year is when I became the editor.
As a freelancer, I think that was probably one of the easier transitions because, as someone that's not in the office, and, as a freelancer, when the editor changed, you're like, all right, is this new guy going to use me? Does this guy know who I am? Does this guy like my work? Does he not? So, I guess at that point you'd already seen, my name come through a few times. So it wasn't like I was a stranger. So luckily I still kept shooting for you guys. So,
yeah. And I think at that time I was feature editor. So I, part of my job was getting all the, freelance stuff and getting all the features to put in, editing the photos, going through, kind of pushing all that stuff through. So, but yeah, so it was versus someone else new coming in who doesn't know you, we were already there. So it was just kind of a continuation. And I did when I became the editor, I did start getting more selective on a lot of the features and a lot of the freelance stuff coming in. And just because, like, I think at that time it was like, okay, well, I only know there's going to be these many issues, these many covers, this much budget, these many pages. So just, try to, that was always the tough part, trying to balance all that. But, just try to up the quality or keep the quality going. 'Cause to me, that's what Street Trucks always, was about, was the quality level.
Oh yeah.
And I watched a little bit of, Brian's interview, and talking about the photography quality level, maybe the more artistic, side to it versus just, getting it handled, getting it shot. So trying to just up that game, a little bit more and keep going with that to bring the quality in.
Well, that's one thing that Street Trucks was always known for, was the photo quality was there. That was the bar. The other magazines try to keep up, but I think when Courtney and Brian and Steve started that, they started that to get that bar where it was at.
Yeah.
And I know that. I'm trying to think who was there when I did the little. So I'm trying to look up the cover now. When I did the little shop truck, the spike truck, that was my. So January 08. So I guess that was right before you got there.
Yeah.
But then I did it again when it become Old Crispy in December 11.
And I was there at that time. And then I'm trying to remember, I want to find it. I think I did a mock-up cover. It was probably before that, but we did it as a joke. And I think we put it in the magazine, but I was trying to find it a while ago. But when the spike truck was on fire, Eric and those and Pascal and those guys had, marshmallows and, all that, and it was like the same angle that you had shot, looking into the bed of the S10. And they had that. And I think I put like, hottest trucking around, just having fun with that. And like 3,000 degree paint job, or I don't know, something like that. But
I always say that's my unicorn truck. I says in my unicorn truck because it was black and it was a mini truck on the cover of Street Trucks. So that was, and then when it ran again silver, I tried to get
no-nos. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to get a similar angle to duplicate that. That's one of the few that I've shot twice. That was actually, I think it was the only truck I've done on two different covers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was, going back to that a little bit. And I know you're talking with Brian about it, of the whole, shooting the black and with the covers, and a lot of the the insight on that was you always wanted something to stand out on the newsstand. Like that's all they cared about was, how many copies are being sold on the newsstand. And so like, yeah, the black was not always going to stand out unless you shot it right or you did something special. And I know Brian and you were saying, the Polly's dually was a favorite photo. My favorite truck. It inspired a lot of what I did, like especially on the interior of my red truck with kind of the old school. Like I have my center console is a 65 Impala SS center console that, modified, put cup holders in, redid a bunch of stuff on it. But, that kind of classic car style was brought in from that. And, that was one of my favorite photos. And like I said, but it's a black truck, but it just looks like candy, like liquid, when you're shooting it like that with that horizon line and all of that. It was funny. I remember when they had a blow up of that cover, and I had it in my office when I was at Street Trucks. And then when Courtney started working with us, he walked in, took it, and he says, "I'm giving this to Polly." And I'm like, I love that poster, but like, it wasn't really mine to keep. And it's like, oh yeah, you're giving it to the guy that owns the truck. Like, okay, so, but that was always a little bit of the battle of trying to balance out what truck was on the cover, what it looked like, or what color. And like, you knew you could put a full-size Silverado, or eventually you can put a C10 on the cover. You knew it would sell.
Yeah,
like, you just knew. But then it's just becomes stale and the same stuff over and over again. Like you have to, like, we did mini trucks. It kind of got to the point where they're like the sales people, or the newsstand people were like, no, basically it was no import mini trucks. Like an S10, so like you say, the Spike truck, Old Crispy, S10s kind of were okay, with mini trucks like that would sell usually. So that putting an S10 on the cover was usually never too much of a concern, but it unfortunately, and especially we had, mini trucking at the time where that was the Bible for mini trucks. So having, a lot of the issues that had an import mini truck on the cover weren't the big sellers, but you kind of had to mix it up, or you had to like sacrifice a little bit to just have some variety and not be stale.
You can't run the same 67 to 72 every month. So
yeah, that people are going to like it and buy it, but then you're going to have people start going, man, it's just the same stuff every month. So,
but now, when Travis left, how long were you there before Kevin come on? Because it was just you for a while, right?
Yeah, so it was me for about 2 years, I think, and then 3 years. So it was like beginning of 2014.
And you were running all the magazines at that time by yourself?
So I was doing Street Trucks, and then I started doing Maximum Drive, and then Bob Ryder was helping out on Maximum Drive, and I think he was helping out on Diesel World, and then he would do a couple Street Trucks things here and there too. So we had, some help, stuff like that, and then but when I took on Maximum Drive, is when part of that kind of deal was hiring Kevin on to help with a lot of the travel, a lot of the feature shoots, a lot of the stuff, on Street Trucks. So then I could kind of focus on just more running the, 2 magazines. And then I was also doing all the digital stuff, trying to push that. Like we had the Apple Newsstand apps, so you could, subscribe and flip through the magazine on your tablet or the phone, and, web stuff, social media, all that. So it was kind of had a lot, going on the plate. So it was like, okay, we need, brought Kevin Aguilar in to help with a lot of load on street trucks and all of that to just try to make it all happen. And it was cool doing Maximum Drive was really cool as well, just because it was something different and there's probably more freedom in what we could cover because it, wasn't street trucks. It wasn't a truck magazine.
Yeah.
So I was trying to put some history stuff in it. Like, Tim Sutton was doing a lot of shoots for me on that magazine because he had stuff like a recreation of an old 1920s land speed, car that wrecked in Florida and, killed the driver. And now someone's rebuilt it, and so telling that whole story and some of the history. And, and we did one time, went around to all, you talked about Southern California being kind of the hub for automotive media, but also got to remember all the, Edelbrock, Iski Cams, all the original companies started here. So, we went around to all the original buildings from like the 50s through the 70s or 80s that a lot of these companies were in, and took pictures of them and got, okay, this is what it looked like in 1950 when Edelbrock had his garage. And then now it's a battery store or whatever it was. So just kind of having fun with that, trying to bring more history in. And we did that with street trucks as well, with like the OBS history that we did in 2011, kind of where it was showing some of that stuff. So I think that's kind of what then pushed, with what we started doing with Auto Revolution when I had left street trucks is telling more of the story, documenting more of the history and all of that with, just the whole automotive industry.
So when you left street trucks, Kevin was there, then is that when you started Auto Revolution? Or did you already have that kind of in the works beforehand, or
no, started that off. Yes. Started that after. And most of it was at the time, this is when Source Interlink, which was trucking, mini trucking, all that, they filed for bankruptcy. And that was, I don't think 25% or a third. Like Source was a distribution company as well. So they distributed a third, let's say, of our magazines. So it was kind of coming down like, okay, we're going to be cutting down on copies, cutting down on distribution, cutting down on, all these things. I was already doing the digital, stuff and trying to push that. Like, okay, let's invest some more into video, invest more on the website. We had a guy who was basically an intern, paid intern that was running our website. Like, let's hire someone that knows digital, knows web, can, video, like really try to go after the digital stuff. And it wasn't happening. So ended up, it's that same thing I think, Travis went through of doing a lot and trying to push things, in the direction you think they should be, and, the support maybe isn't there. So, all right, well, just do it ourselves. That. It's kind of like, okay, well, if you guys aren't willing to do what we see needs to be done to keep this media and to keep this brand moving, we're just going to try to do it ourselves. So,
and then, so when you started Auto Revolution, what was your main objective with that? Just doing video stuff and running with that?
Everything had video was like the main focus. So, but, we were doing, the website, doing an app and stuff. So rather than, let's say you're doing a feature on a truck, you've got in the magazine 7-8 photos, 4 or 5 paragraphs, and in your tech box. And usually first paragraph would be, here's the owner and this is how we got the truck or why. Then you'd go through, okay, he did all this on the suspension, did all this on the interior. There was a lot of the people had a way more interesting personal story, or had a really cool job that they did, that wasn't maybe getting mentioned or known. So we were kind of looking at like, okay, well, who's maybe some of these people that are building vehicles or have a cool vehicle, but they're also doing really cool, work or art or something like that. Like, let's profile them.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff we originally started out, doing was our series Behind the Wheel, which, still on Amazon and Tubi and stuff like that. But it was, it wasn't even streaming TV at that time. We were just still doing just the video and then an article with it. But it was highlighting more of that personal side of it where, yeah, here's the cool truck. Here's their, really cool car. But, they're, a pro BMX rider, or they're a surfboard manufacturer, doing custom surfboards that's inspired by, hot rods and stuff like that. Or like a guy named Bobby Green, Old Crow Speed Shop, where Delmo got his start at in Southern California, and was renting shop space. When he was doing the trucks there in Burbank. Well, Bobby owns like a dozen really cool bars and restaurants in LA, and has collection of vintage belly tankers and vintage cars and hot rods and all this stuff. Like, why not do a profile on that guy? Tell his story versus just, oh, let me shoot his car. So that's kind of the foundation of what we started doing with Auto Revolution, was to really tell people's stories and tell the history. And it's evolved and moved since then. But I think with what we're doing now with, either the builds or documentaries and the podcast, it's still kind of the same, just trying to tell and document, a lot of the history in our industry.
Now, who all is it? You and Marcel? Is that just the two that's there?
Yeah.
Do you have?
It's the two of us, and then we'll work. We have people that we'll contract and work with, whether it's like mentioned earlier, Braden Freeland, who owns Cruise Industries right now. Brian at Grinder. When we were doing a lot of the filming stuff with Trey 5, with Jeremy and Frank out there, if we needed, sometimes we needed, a 6-hour drive to Phoenix, so sometimes ask Brian to film certain things or something like that.
So you said Amazon's where you first started putting your video stuff. You did that over YouTube?
That was a little bit later. That was probably 2016. We got a partnership deal with Amazon to put, the longer format kind of shows up there. So we were banking on that and did, several series on there. Some documentary, some more like, I guess, reality build, shows and stuff like that. But that, they kept kind of changing the revenue share, changing the pay scale, kind of slowly started going away basically on the Amazon deal. So we kind of shifted back to YouTube and focusing on trying to build up the YouTube channel.
Is that where your focus is now, is on YouTube, or?
Yeah, YouTube, social media. So, and then obviously the podcasts are available on all the audio platforms as well.
Yeah. So that was my next thing. So you've done several different podcasts. I guess you start them and then pass them on, or how do you handle that?
No. So we have 3 that we currently produce. And we all have, so the main one that we first started with 3 years ago, and, during the pandemic, and, it's like, all right, well, what can we do? So that's Car Guy Confessions. So that's with Jeff Smith. He's a former Hot Rod Magazine editor, Carcraft editor. Cam Benty, was Hot Rod editor as well, and was, I think, marketing director for Flowmaster for a while. And then Steve Strope, who's just amazing muscle car, classic car builder. So that's Car Guy Confessions. And we started that out with, some support from ARP bolts, ARP fasteners. And then that one we usually film at the Peterson Automotive Museum in LA.
Nice.
or we'll do it at the Grand National Roaster Show. So that's what's been cool with that is like, okay, we've got, this was at the Roaster Show, but like, for example, like, okay, Cadzilla is, one of the most iconic cars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Larry Erickson is the one who designed it, for Boyd. And, well, that car's at the Peterson. So, hey, if we wanted to, we can do a podcast in front of that car. So it's been cool to have that kind of deal where we can, have it a little more interesting for what's around and what we're checking out. And then last year started High Octane Hustle with Teresa Contreras and Jane Thurman. And Teresa has Baja Forged. Used to be her and her sister and her family were LGECTS Motorsports. She's every year, well, now Ford's not at SEMA anymore, but there would always be at least a Bronco and a couple other vehicles that were in Ford's booth that they built. And, she also does lots of Real Revolution. She was partners with Jesse Combs. So a lot of off-road stuff. And then Jane's a driving instructor, does a lot of autocross and Corvette muscle car stuff. So
it's still an automotive-related podcast in that aspect.
Yeah, and so and that how they've angled that and is the automotive side, but also like kind of the business entrepreneur side in the automotive industry. And then me and Marcel started Influence and Impact last year. That one's been really, really fun doing that, where we're diving into the history, So like I said, that's kind of like our, culmination of what we've been doing and what we enjoy of really not just telling the history from what we know, but also then, all right, let's research, make sure we know what we're talking about and, try to put it out there. So that one's been really cool, doing the whole history of the C10, and more so of like the last 15 years when it jumped in popularity. And then mini trucking history, we did that. Right now we're working on muscle cars, kind of telling different stories in that industry and focusing on the aftermarket guys and, that versus just, what Chevy did or what Ford did.
So what it sounds like with the people you have doing, you doing the podcast and then the other one you have, it seems like the natural progression is from editor to podcasters, the way it sounds with you said the hot rod editors and stuff. And
I mean, that's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all we're doing now. No, but that's, it's been cool on like that Car Guy Confessions one, for example, of I've been able to meet people that I had never met before, that I had known or had heard their name or had looked up to and having them on there. Like, the one we just launched with Car Guy Confessions was with Troy Trepanier, who's probably, in my opinion, been one of the top builders and, has always been one of my favorite builders. And he's telling the story of how he was 17 years old or something like that, I think, with his, Chevelle meeting Jeff Smith at a show in the 90s. And, they went and shot, his car. So it's kind of that same thing that we've had with, Brian McCormick or Courtney Howell, Johnny Oat, like the truck guys, is kind of like, okay, well, they were doing the magazine stuff in the 80s and the 90s and obviously even later, but they were around for all the big, important stuff that was going on at that time. And now kind of either reliving it or just telling some of those stories, and bringing on a lot of the guests from back then, but also now of, kind of bringing it out. So to me, it's content and it's telling a story and, educating or entertaining and advertising, a little bit. So it's not the exact same, but it's in the same, wheelhouse as what we're doing magazine wise to doing video content, social media content, podcasts. It's just telling a story and producing content.
Well, the thing with like this podcast is I try to get people on like you, some of the other photographers. I got some, marketing directors and stuff coming on, but it's people that I kind of have that view of in the industry. It's like, all right, well, this person's done something, but the average showgoer spectator may have heard the name, may not have, but don't understand what you've gone through to get to where you're at now. You just don't step in and doing stuff for Amazon or setting up podcasts or videos. Like, you had a progression to get there where, a lot of the kids now think they can just wake up one morning and be this mega influencer. So,
and whether it was any of the advertising or marketing work or just contract work that, did, whether it's graphic design or video work for a lot of the companies that we've worked with, wouldn't have had any of that if I probably wasn't at Street Trucks, or wasn't at a magazine, because you made all those connections, especially being in that where, maybe some people that are into, trucks or into shows, going to car shows, but they have their regular day job. They're not as immersed day to day and night to night, in, the industry. So it's helping having that like full blown immersion in the industry for your hobby and for your career, that you're going to meet all these people and make all these contacts and just kind of keep it all going.
Well, I wanted to do that for years. Of course, I had a normal, I'd say Monday through Friday, but it was never really set schedule. It was from dark to dark pretty much every day. But then when I wasn't doing that, I was in the automotive thing. And then I started doing the SEMA build. So it's like, I'd always wanted to make that leap. Well, then when I made the leap, I'm like, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? But back to that thing, things happen for a reason. So it was meant for me to do it when I did it. So
that's the thing is, would you maybe have been able to do as much 10 years ago? Like, it's kind of that whole deal is, you wanted to do it earlier, but maybe at that time it wouldn't have worked out as well, because, you're able to gain more connections and more, opportunities that would come along.
I still got to, travel the country and shoot shows and features and crazy stuff and meet, like, I remember like every year I'd go to SEMA, like I'd run into you and Travis and, that like, people like that was the only place I could ever run into you guys. Like, I hardly ever seen y'all at any other East Coast stuff, just because we're, 3,000 miles apart from each other. But that was the one time that I could see you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. SEMA was always the mutual meeting point, if you will. And that's, it's kind of interesting, talking about the travel shows, because for a while that was, for the first couple of years of Street Trucks, that's what I was kind of doing. It's usually always the younger single guy that, go travel on the, take 2 flights, or two weekends out of the month, you're, traveling to some, Texas or Florida or something. But there was always certain shows, you'd always go to every year, that you knew you'd have good coverage, good features. Maybe there was a local shop that you could hook up with, a couple of days ahead of time or something. And a lot of times too, the promoters would help out with either, hotel rooms or airfare to get, the publicity out of it. But I know like there's a lot of East Coast shows, but I think mostly we just would use guys like you or other freelancers in that area to cover that. 'Cause I think Tennessee,
I'm
probably,
so.
Yeah, but I'm saying like Tennessee, Kentucky, but like anything north of that, I don't know if there wasn't too many shows.
No, it's a handful.
And handful, but there was always kind of that, that California, Oregon, Washington, California, Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, and then a couple, Midwest and East Coast, stuff thrown in there. So, but that was what was really cool is being able to do that much traveling and be paid for it, and not have to pay for the travel. So it was a lot of long hours and, long time because he still had the same deadline every month. It didn't matter if you were gone for a week or in the office the whole time. You still had the same amount of work to do every month.
Yeah.
But like I say, yeah, being able to travel, not just for the shows, but to, there's a handful of states I'm sure I never would have traveled to if it wasn't for the magazine.
Yep. Well, where do you see Auto Revolution going? Like, what's your immediate projection with what you have in the works now versus what you would like to do with it?
So right now, like I said, we have the podcasts. I want to trying to grow that more, get more advertising support on it, being able to, because right now we're doing all of them are every other week. So we have, 6 podcasts coming out, every month, but it's not, the same one every single week. And that's just because time, scheduling, all that. I'd like to get to a point where we can do each of those full time, multiple episodes a week for all of them, or one episode a week for all of them, so you got several coming out. So just kind of ramping that up would be nice.
And for those of y'all watching this on YouTube, yeah, Jason's in his office. He does have a full podcast studio, but for some reason the connection stuff wouldn't work.
Wi-Fi was not cooperating today.
So don't let this fool you.
He does have a white wall instead.
He does have a full put together studio, so you'll have to check out his stuff to see that. So anyway, so other than the podcast, what else do you have in the works?
So I just finished up a lot on my I have a Tahoe, 2000 Tahoe Limited. Just did a bunch of work on that, full, Beltec suspension. Took actually the Colorado custom wheels that were on it. Those were the 17s that were on my red truck originally when I bagged it. But I ended up taking those, getting them fixed, getting them blasted and Cerakoted them and put it on the Tahoe. So finished up the stereo on that. So like that build's more or less kind of done. We've got 2 other OBS trucks that we're working on. One is Beltec's, their full new coilover conversion kit. We had the chassis out at Dino's and then out at the reunion show a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so that's one of our projects. We got another OBS. We got a couple of NBS trucks. We got a Volkswagen that's at TMI right now. So it's kind of that tough balance of, we got to do the podcast every single couple weeks or every week. And then we're trying to, film these builds and accomplish builds. So mostly it's ramp up on the podcast production schedule and ramp up and continue on, the various builds that we're doing and try to make those more consistent, if you will.
Gotcha.
And that's, to me, that's just, the content, being able to put the content out there where, you've got the podcast, then you've got, kind of how to, or build, ideas for, a lot of the OBS trucks is kind of our wheelhouse, and C10s and, still kind of playing in the truck world. So.
And is that all you do now is the Auto Revolution stuff? Like that's your full-time gig?
I do have several clients that I've done graphic design work for a long time. So I still do that. So doing web design, graphics, all that kind of stuff. So have a few clients. Some of them are automotive, some of them are not. So doing that and then the Auto Revolution side.
So where do people find you? And do you have like one landing page for everything, or?
Yeah, you can go Auto Revolution on Instagram, and we have the link in the bio will have all links to our YouTube stuff, affiliate links, Amazon shows, website, all that. So, and then if you type in Auto Revolution on YouTube or Amazon or Tubi, they'll pull up our shows and our videos. But then, the podcasts are Car Guy Confessions, High Octane Hustle, and Influence and Impact.
Well, I've asked everybody that's a photographer that I've had on the podcast so far, do you have one shoot that stands out with everything you've shot that's like that was my favorite shoot? Whether it be the vehicle or the way the shoot went down or what?
Yeah, there's probably a couple, and there's some, like, I don't know how much longer you want to go, because there's some good stories I can throw you for some photo shoots that we've done. Um, I'd say one that was probably one of my favorites, because of how it came out and the quality of the vehicle and love of the vehicle. It was I think they called it the Snake Bit F100. So it was a silver F100 done kind of Cobra style. It was in Ford's SEMA booth. And I remember, this is when Facebook was really starting to become more popular. I took a picture of it, put it up on Facebook, and it got 35,000 likes or something, just ridiculous amount. Yeah. And so I literally, like, when I saw that, I told, I can't remember who it was. I'm like, all right, I'm putting that on the cover. Just because it's like, okay, if that's literally the most popular truck post we've done in ever, it's got to be on the cover.
Yeah.
So what was cool with that, able to, so you had SEMA November, Dino's, and when Dino's was more or less just kind of the kickoff party on Friday night, for Good Guys in Arizona, was, a week and a half away. And the guy that built the truck was from Canada, and then it was going to get auctioned at Barrett-Jackson. So it basically was staying in Arizona until January for Barrett. But the guy didn't want, it was at someone's house. They didn't want to drive it far. Like, they didn't want to mess it up. So yeah. I literally, luckily it was in a really nice neighborhood in Scottsdale. And so after Good Guys, me and Jeremy from Trey 5, we went over there, and I shot it, like, parked basically on a neighborhood street. Like, I shot all the details in the driveway, and then we literally pulled it down, a couple houses where there was like some lighting and stuff like that. But then I just did light painting around it, because it was nighttime, and especially with that silver and all that, it just glowed. So that was really cool. And then what was cool too is we did on the cover of that magazine, every once in a while they would do like a spot color, something like usually metallic or something, just make it stand out. So we had them do a silver metallic logo and, headline and all that stuff. So that one really popped out and was a really cool shoot and cool cover. And that one did really well.
And so, what year was this?
Probably 2012.
So it was really
13, maybe.
So 35,000 likes or whatever it was would be.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something just ridiculous. It just went crazy for that time and for comparative to anything else we did. So that was kind of like, okay, yeah, if you want to use a gauge to something that's going to sell well, all right, well, there you go. So yeah, that was a really cool one. And we've had some crazy stories too from photo shoots with, like, Paul Tracy, the IndyCar driver, getting a ticket from a ranger at Red Rock, Canyon, and me having to tow strap his little hot rod back home. And
I'd always heard of people getting tickets in Red Rock, and I shoot there every year at SEMA. I must be on a different road than what everybody else is.
And so we had already finished the shoot, but his alternator went out and he didn't have registration on his, like, it wasn't registered. So he got a ticket for that. My camera was already away. Like, by the time a ranger, I think if you're doing it early enough and you're out of there, they're not going to notice, but it's a national park. You have to have a permit to do any commercial photography in
I don't think I go far enough. Like, where I shoot up in Red Rock, there's like a fire station road that's off to the side that's not on the beaten path. So, they have people come by and be like, why are you in the road? But other than that, knock on wood, I ain't ever had any issues out of it.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, yeah, we always used to go out to Lake Bed. In the last few years of seaman, we started going to, there was like a rock quarry that was like down off, kind of right off, a little bit off the freeway. Like you would take Las Vegas Boulevard, like down a couple miles. And that was a cool spot because there was mountains, so the sun would come up a little bit later. And there was, like, that's where I shot. Like, I know Mike Losh's Cloud9 truck shot it out there. And yeah, and so you had, like, one way was, perfect lighting and just open land. And then if you turned around, there was a mountain backdrop. Or if you went that way, there was a huge several gravel piles. So it was like you had more choices on what and where you could shoot and stuff like that. So I think the last 2 years of SEMA, when I was there, we shot out there.
So I need to find more locations because I've only got a couple, and every year I go back, and one of the ones I've used is a building or a parking lot or something like it. Anything with the strip in the background's always gone the next year when you come back. So
yeah, well, and there's a couple places in Vegas where you can go and have a nice view of the strip, but yeah, they might now be houses or something like that. And that's what's funny is usually the police. I never got bothered by police, cops or anything. Like if they stopped by, they would check it out. All right, cool, and then leave if we weren't doing anything crazy. It was usually always a park ranger or a security guard or something that would, give you some trouble or hassle sometimes. Like I remember I shot Scott Lawrence's Orange C10 out in Porterville in front of the lake, Porterville Lake. And then went back the next night after the show to shoot a couple more vehicles and barely gotten started. And the park ranger came up and said, "You can't take pictures here. This is national property. I'll have to call Homeland Security." Like he was basically like, you're not allowed to take pictures at this lake because you might be a terrorist. So it was just like, really, dude? So we just went down the road and they found like off the side of the road, literally, and did the shoots there. So finding locations was always a challenge, but then, yeah, you'd have those few that you would kind of put into your filing cabinet in your brain and remember, next time you needed something.
Well, I know Mike Alexander used to complain all the time at Mini Truck and be like, everything you shoot's got trees and this in the background. He's like, you got to find something different. And he was at a show I was at in Kentucky.
Like a desert, and you're like, I'm in North Carolina. Like, there is no, that's what we have.
Was at a show in Kentucky and went up this mountain trying to find a place. And he's like, man, all those times I've given you a hard time about trees. He goes, I understand. He's like, that's all you have out here.
Yeah. Trees are like a building. Go find a building or something to get in front of. Yeah.
We don't have nothing flat in the mountains out here. It don't work like that. So
yeah. Well, and that's, you try to mix it up and stuff too. I did want to mention this, so it's going to be kind of off tangent, but I just remember from listening to your interview with Brian about the Street Trucks logo. So the reason it changed in 2006 or whatever to that, because I think you had said, or Travis had said, like, you wish he never changed the logo. So at that time, they were trying to compete more with trucking, and so they were doing more lifted trucks, doing more of those type of vehicles, more type of that content. So that's why the Street Trucks logo at that time was street and about that big, and trucks was about that big. So that's why it was changed, was to try to, I think it was a sales tool to try to compete with the more lifted truck. And it's funny, you say off-road, but it's like none of those were off-road trucks. No. They were, but that crowd. So that's the reason that logo change happened. And then when I became the editor, we had talked about trying to go back to even the original logo, or, changing the logo when Travis was there, and it never happened. And then kind of kept pushing, and we're able to do it, and was able to sell it on the fact that, you looked at the newsstand, like basically brought it to guy and, okay, here's another magazine and here's street trucks. What do you read? What do you see? I see street.
Yeah,
Okay, so
makes
what's
sense.
the name of the magazine? I don't know. All I see is a little tiny street. So we went back to the logo going all the way across. And I designed that logo that's currently on street trucks.
Nice. I'm sitting there looking at
So
an old cover right now, and that does make sense. When you put one in front of it, you'd see the top
yeah,
half of trucks and wouldn't be able to read what it is. So now I know
yeah,
when the two ballistic the issue got done, we tried to mimic the original mini truck issue from the original
hmm
ballistic, and they even the art director even went through and like changed the logo to fit that font. And I was like, no, it has to stay that font. The colors can change. I was like, but that
yeah,
font can't change because people's not going to know it's the same one.
yeah. You
So,
can't go too far off on trying to do something like that special where it's not
but
going to be
seeing it
recognizable.
in that old school, like that mini truck style font, it was like, they don't even look right. Like it just like it didn't even flow at all. I think I still have
Yeah,
the picture of it, but it didn't make sense. But of course I said no, we'll change it back or whatever. But
yeah.
it's a
Is it still Eugene?
yeah,
The
Eugene's
art
still
director?
doing it.
Yeah,
I've never
he
talked to
was
him,
solid. He does
never
great work.
seen him any call he's ever been on, video call. He's never been video, just
I mean, yeah,
audio.
he's in the Philippines, but yeah, he was. I think a year or two before I came on as the editor. So when me and Travis were doing it is when he became our art director after Gabby, and
Oh, he's been there for a
yeah,
while then.
and dude, he was awesome. I mean, obviously his for that, me and him, especially my graphic design background, it was bounce a couple ideas or hey, here's a couple things what I'm thinking of, and yeah, he did a really good job of making because that was the thing. Like you look at some magazines, they look very plain or like a magazine where it's okay. Here's picture, text, title. There's not as much creativity to it. So, having an art director too like that is a good thing to have for making it
There was a
stand
few
out,
features
make
I'd
it
have
look
come
good.
across that, like the paint was like where they'd sprayed and got heavy at the edge of the door, and it's like one of those things I didn't notice when you first look at the photos, but then you see the PDF of it laid out. It's like it jumps out at you, and it's like, hey, can
hmm
you blend that in? And next version he sends you, it's all blended in. It looks perfect. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's good at what he does. So, but he's still there.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's cool. But yeah, I mean that's just real quick. I know, but so with the current logo, and we've done a bunch of different versions, and I did designs. Eugene did a couple designs. Another art director we had did a couple designs. Because I didn't want also too to be like, oh, this is what I want it to be, and I'm the editor. So we then piled 5 or 6 of them together, sent it to everybody, from ad sales to newsstand to all that, and be like, okay,
Yeah.
which do you like? And the one they picked was the one that I did. But with that, I wanted to kind of mimic a little bit of the original logo, like have a little of that style to it, but then and also be able to do like you're saying, change the colors, so it has the outline. So you could, because I remember they always did that on the original magazines where they would, try to match the color to the truck or something like that,
Yeah.
or mix it up. So kind of like try to modernize that logo a little bit, so kind of
Yeah.
went with
So
that.
looking both of them side by side. So it's just most people probably honestly forget the original logo though.
Well, yeah, now I mean, because that would have been probably 2006 maybe when it was changed. So it's been a while since that's
Well,
there.
the
But
spike truck, the original spike truck still has the old logo. So that was '08, January '08.
really, so that has the original Street
Yeah.
Trucks look.
Yeah.
Hmm.
With the
So
little
then,
street
okay,
between the T and the K.
the what?
Like the street is in between the T and the K, like it's over the RUC.
Oh no, I was talking about like the original like 2000 1999 street trucks.
Oh, I guess that was it. So that means there's three logos then.
Yeah, there's been three logos.
Okay, I forgot about the first one.
Yeah, so like the from 99 to '06 or whatever was or '07 was the original street trucks where it's just the block letters all
Yeah,
in one line. And then yeah, they change it to that uh, you know the
first
large
street.
lowercase trucks. Um, and then in yeah, probably 2013 I think was when we changed to what the current logo is.
Do you ever miss working in the print world now that you're in the design and video world?
I mean, that's the thing too. Like, I didn't necessarily think of it as, oh, I'm a magazine editor, but not like the print world. It's like, no, we're making content, we're creating content, putting
You
like
just
news
shifted
out
what you
there.
did.
So yeah. To me, it wasn't like I wouldn't differentiate necessarily like the print to the video stuff. It's like, are you putting out content about trucks? Something like that. Um, I what I probably miss is you have that whole company behind you for doing all your sales, your art, like all that stuff
Yeah.
versus doing a lot of it yourself. But that's kind of the trade off and the flexibility that you have to kind of see some kind of opportunity, just just go for it. So um, like I said, I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't be doing what I do now and where I'm at if it wasn't for the magazines and for street trucks. So
Well, I appreciate you coming on. My goal is to try to catch up with a lot of the people I've worked with over the years, and like I said, you were in that group of people I worked with, or for, or
hmm
however you want to put that. So,
yeah, no, appreciate
you didn't say I can't use you no more. You're done. So
it.
it kept me
No,
shooting.
and that's yeah with the freelance stuff of okay, well I got this X budget, so it was a little bit tough trying to split it all up, but it came down to, is it a good, are you able to scout good trucks, and is the photography or writing or both good quality, and you know gonna be in there.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and like I said, we'll guess catch you online.
Yep, appreciate it.